So, welcome everyone to Definitely Different Conversations with today's guest, Yasodhara Romero Fernandes.
Hi.
Welcome, Yasodhara.
Thank you, Ivy. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, very welcome. So today we're going to talk about Beyond Distraction. But first, who is Yaso? So Yaso is her short nickname. I also have the pleasure to create with her company, House of Possibilities. And Yasodhara is a worldwide facilitator, a CF, from the tools Access Consciousness. You facilitate foundation classes, talk to the entities, right voice for you, 3-day body classes, and bars classes. Is there anything that I'm forgetting right now?
Well, are you forgetting? In regards to access consciousness tools, I would say no. And there is also the whole part where I work with singers and vocalists, so that might be something to add.
Yes, because Yasodhara, you used to be a professional singer as well, worldwide.
Yeah. Yes.
And and there's also you're also doing something with tools for schools, the generation education.
Yes.
So, yeah.
To empower teachers, to empower children, to start creating from a different place. And I would even say, like, to start creating and learning and teaching beyond distraction, beyond distractor implants.
We're getting into the distraction.
We're getting
So what is distraction? What is that?
And so we and thank you for this invitation, because we are, like, when we talk about distractor implants in access consciousness, we talk about certain things that actually keep us out of choice. So one that I've seen a lot, and that a lot of people use, for example, is anger or fear.
Yes.
And anger and fear are two of many distractor implants that basically, when you get to a particular space in your life where you could make a different choice, where you get access, for example, to your strength, how often do we then, like, go into, like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated, or oh my God, I'm so angry, because it's so intense, rather than asking, like, oh, am I actually frustrated or angry? Or is there a new level of potency available here?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. One of the things that I used to have a lot, and thanks to these tools, was basically what I forgot.
It's gone.
Blaming myself, shame, regret, and guilt. Those were like, and anger. Those were like my top 5 go-to feelings. That basically, like, makes you totally in reaction. Like, there's no action, there's no choice. You're like stuck there, feeling angry, feeling shameless, feeling ashamed, and then feeling guilty, or feeling in fear.
Yeah, and they buckle up often. So, like, these moments where you're, like, super angry, and then usually when that stops, we go straight into, like, oh my God, why did I do that? And oh, what are people gonna think of me? So it keeps you going from one to another, to the next, back to the first, to the, and it's like this. That's the thing with, like, for example, anger therapy, or like, where you try to change these distractor implants, is that it will usually not work, and you will find new triggers and go over again from the one to the next to the other, because it's not real. It's just an implant.
Yeah. I actually have this book next to me, Living Beyond Distraction.
Yes.
I'm going to put a link, and this talks about all the distractor implants. They're like 24 in total. And as soon as something pops up, like you're jealous, or you're in hate, you're hating someone, or you're feeling guilty, if that like immediately pops up in your brain, is basically like, oh, I'm functioning from a distractor implant. Could you tell us something more about that? Like, what do you do with it? Like, you're suddenly, the first step is like, oh fuck, am I functioning from a distractor implant? What's next?
Yeah, or are the people around me functioning from distractor implants? Because you can have both. And what you already said, it keeps you out of choice. So when you're on this path, in a distractor implant, on a distractor implant, there's no more choice. So there's now only the choice to either be angry or have fear. So what you can do with that is that you are gonna address everything that is underneath that. And the beauty with these access consciousness tools is that you don't need to know what's underneath it. Because how often is there so much energy in a particular situation that gets triggered, and we have no idea. Like, we have no idea where those energy come from, where they have been created. So with these tools, what you're going to do actually is just to acknowledge, like, oh, distractor implants. Okay, now let's address everything that's underneath there, and let's address everything that allows this thing to actually not change, that is keeping that in place. And what you can do with that is pock and potting. It's like just let the clearing statement go loose on that thing until it changes.
Yeah, I love it. So for you guys watching and you want to get straight away to business, if you're like functioning from any distractor implant, for example, jealousy, everything that is holding this distractor implant in place, I uncreate and destroy times Godzillion, good and bad, right and wrong, bottom pock on shirts, boys and yons. This last one is the clearing statement. You can find more information on theclearingstatement.com. And it basically addresses all the energies that is keeping this distractor implant in place. And then you can ask what Yaso says, okay, so what's underneath that? Why do we ask that? After we clear it, why do we ask what's underneath that? Like, what is underneath that?
Oh, is this a question to me?
Yeah.
And I would say with these things, how much will we go and distract ourselves by going into our brains and now ask, like, why? So what I love with these tools is to start using them, to start acknowledging when something is off, when there is no creation. Because one of the distractor implants, for example, is business. And so people start asking, like, oh, is business always a distractor implant? Relationship is another one. Oh, is relationship always a distractor implant? Which is actually not so. But if you have been creating business or relationship and it has been funky or things have not been working, you might want to ask, like, okay, so how many distractor implants are actually ruling my business, are actually ruling my relationships? From how many distractor implants are you functioning in relationship, in business, and maybe also the others? And then you don't need to know what's underneath that again, but you just go and destroy and uncreate everything that's underneath that and everything that holds that in place.
Yeah.
Until that energy changes, until you feel more space. And I like, certainly with anger and rage, I love it because it changes so much. Even if you're in front of someone that's really angry, or that's like really like in this, oh, you can just do it in your head. And you're gonna like turn off the fire that's going on. You're just gonna get the oil out of the situation.
Yes, and that's often true. Like when I facilitate myself with this, and then like when I ask, like, okay, what's underneath that, and then I uncreate and destroy that. If there's like an energy coming up, and then when you're like go through the whole thing, that's what's left. You're just space. You're like at peace again.
Yeah, and that, I think one of the like the biggest one is like fear. Like, how many times do you hear yourself or do you hear people say, like, oh no, I can't, I'm afraid. But we never ask, like, is that really true? And fear is always a distraction from either being aware of something and not acknowledging it, but very often also a misidentified energy of excitement. And that's the thing I've seen a lot when I work with people that are on stage. They will be like, oh my God, I'm so scared to go on stage and I don't know what to say. And then the moment you just ask, like, well, is it like, is it fear or is it something else? Like, their eyes go like this, because it's the first time they actually wondered about what was going on. Oh, is it actually fear? Huh. But how often do we assume whatever we feel that is what it is? Because we've been referencing so often to a particular like definition, and we most of the times don't ask, like, is it really that, or is there actually something else going on?
That is so true. Like, I used to had a lot of fear in my world, and I actually the tool with, okay, is this fear or is this excitement? I used that one a lot, and then I actually came to realize that there's not much fear in my world.
It's a distractor implant always.
Yeah.
And usually, like, I love to use that tool also with kids, because like kids will sometimes do that, for example, in the dark, and then they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so scared in the dark. And usually when you ask them, like, well, is it like, are you scared or are you aware of something, you will start, like, you will see that they actually start opening up, and like now they're going to look at, oh, what is actually true. And it, like, you can still choose for fear, but most of them I've seen really like looking at, oh, I'm actually aware of something here. What is that? What's going on in the dark?
Yeah. Wow. Yes. And how often have we picked that up from when we grew up? Like, I used to be so afraid of the dark till I was 30. No joke. And then I learned the tools of talk to the entities, which is like a whole totally different conversation.
Yeah.
But like, there's no more fear of the dark, and it's a lot of it I just picked up from my family.
Yeah.
And most people, like, how many people are afraid of the dark?
Yep, and are functioning from distraction all the time. I think it's really the more I play with these tools, the more I start recognizing how much I am still, and I was functioning from distractor implants. You know, something gets into your world, something explodes, have a busy day. Like, how much do you need before you go from being happy and space into no space at all, into stress and into all of this kind of weirdness? And how much does that slow you down and take you away from choosing to be creative and generative in every moment of the day?
Yes. I actually, one of the things that I used to function from was like choosing relationship as a distraction. So I was always more or less in a relationship. And then I started using lots of the tools of access consciousness. And like, so many years later, like, I've been using the tools for 5 years now. And I have not been, just like, I think it's 5 years ago since I've been in a relationship. Since then, like, none. And it's like where I used to think that I needed a relationship to like have a meaningful life or to be able to create something. I actually find out that I am very capable on my own to create anything if I want to. I don't need a relationship or somebody else. Now it's more a choice. Would I like to have somebody in my life?
I love that.
Yeah.
And for the people that are not panicking, like, oh my God, I got a relationship, like, do I like have to give it up or what?
No.
Am I functioning from distractor implants? What if you, like, how do I know that I'm functioning from distractor implants? Well, how you know is just by asking. And you can ask it like with everything you create. Oh, am I functioning from distractor implants here? And then again, as we said before, you can just destroy and create everything that's underneath it. and everything that's holding that in place. And sometimes that might be like in a one-timer that it changes, but maybe that energy you'll have that will come up like more and more and more, and you'll just have to learn to be present with that and detect it. Yeah, so you can change it the moment you step on it, like a mine. You know, it's like, oh, nope, I'm not gonna go there. Let's change it straight away.
Yeah. So instead of like, it's like that thing like when we say somebody pushed my buttons, or you push somebody's buttons. This is what happens when you literally, like, every time you catch yourself from a distractor and you just uncreate and destroy it with a clearing statement, is like you're no longer, people can no longer push your buttons. You're like, yeah. Oh. And this is maybe also something that's worthy mentioning here, is like how many people use distractors to control themselves, but also to control other people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that we can say about that?
Are there any questions? No, I think the ones that look. I think one of the ones that struck me most that was in there was peace. Peace as a distractor implant. And when I read that, I was like, what is that? Like, how can peace be a distractor implant? And then in the book, it says, like, it talks about how we as a being, we are actually peace. We are at peace. But how often do we go look for something or someone that will give us peace? So you look for something outside of you to bring you something where you're functioning from a distractor implant. And that was one of my favorite ones, where I was like, oh, wow, that's an interesting energy actually to be aware of. Like, where do I distract myself from being peace by looking for something or someone that will give me peace?
Wow. I actually had like a little revelation. I used to be a hippie for, I don't know, for a time when I was in Australia. So functioning from that distractor implants. And that was basically my motto. Like, how do you call that thing with the yoga? Love, light, and peace. And doing like la 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 la. And I was like totally distracting myself. And I didn't want to see where what really was going on. Like, I didn't want to see where people were functioning from. I didn't want to see where I was functioning from. It was basically like total distraction and destruction.
Wow.
Of me and my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I that is one of the, like, for me, Access Consciousness, like the gift these classes bring and these tools bring to people that choose them, that work with them, that live with them, that use them in their lives, is that there will come like a sense of space and peace. And I've just been traveling for a month giving classes, and we have created so much through this reality, often dis-ease and no space. And we keep looking, or else I won't say we, but what I've seen a lot of people do is like, looking for getting more perfect, looking for a certain target or a certain goal, that if you have that, you'll finally feel whole, kind of. But that whole thing is like never really addressed as being you. And through these tools and in these classes, and there is body work, there is vocal work, there is like clearings, name it and you have it in Access, I would say, through ways to get through that, or to that space. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I see in these classes, is that people get a sense of space and peace where nothing else is required, where they finally get to meet them and to have that place where it's like, wow, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be anything. And you can go through a lot of techniques to try to get there. And then there's suddenly that place where you are just being it, and things just start shifting and changing in, I would say, like miraculous ways. And miraculous might sound a little like woo woo wow wow wow. But yeah, it's just amazing. And I've been working also a lot with people that went through abuse and those kind of things, which are often like heavy topics, and topics where there is little to no space in bodies, for example, because people have been going through it, been holding themselves together, making the best out of it. And the moment you can start receiving you, and you don't have to run, you don't have to be something different, you don't have to hide anything anymore, and you can just learn to be present with everything that is, and see what you can be that will shift and change whatever isn't working in your life. That is something that is such a gift to me, to and an honor also to be present with that, with the people,
which is basically really, and thank you for that. Like you're basically saying, like the gift is just being aware of everything and everyone in your life, and like how much have we like been avoiding to be aware with distraction, been using to distract ourselves so we wouldn't be aware, as what I've came to know in these last 5 years. And I had a very interesting journey with awareness, where I started to become more aware, and I didn't like what I was aware of. Like I didn't like what other people were thinking, and I didn't like what other people were like functioning from, and I didn't like this reality. And I was like, I thought like awareness was pure poison, because I could no longer be in the distraction of peace. Like I could no longer live in an airy, basically that is the airy fairy. You were just saying like, maybe that's like airy fairy, but what if the airy fairy is like you excluding yourself from the world, and your true gift, being aware, is something that we like have trying to like push away, as though we're like stupid. We don't know. We go to the doctors. People will know. People will tell us. So I want to this, and this is like what's really is popping is like what is like, and that was like the title, Beyond Distraction.
And I love that, be beyond distraction. Yeah,
it's like,
what if you
being aware, but with not making it right and not making it wrong, and just like Buddhism really describes it so well, as like you become the observer of everything and everyone. But what's something that the Buddhism didn't give us was a bunch of tools, which Access makes it possible to be the observer and start being.
And I love, like, do we have like a little more or not? Do we have to?
Yeah.
Well, I love that, because like for me, a lot of times, like I heard that, and being an observer, it created like kind of a separation in my world where I had to observe. And by working a lot with these tools and receiving a lot of body work, I started getting that being an observer is really where you don't make anything bigger than you. It's not where, like, you know, when you watch a game or something, being the observer will be like standing on the sideline. And for a long time I thought like, oh, if I, like, you know, it's like creating a separation between me and others, because I don't want to be aware, I don't want to have that. But what if you could be so big, what we actually are, that things just slide through you and pass you, and you will be aware of that. But what if you didn't have to give up your space? And I think that's mainly what this book is about, is by like through giving up like our addiction to Distractor Implants, where you can always have everything you are in every situation.
So is it
And you're
like
not at the
basically,
effect anymore.
sorry, sorry for interrupting.
No, you go.
So it's basically like asking to give up our addiction to not be aware.
Well, yeah, or choosing. Like, yeah, okay, do I want to choose that?
Yeah. Which maybe like we talked a lot about, well, you talked a lot about being, and one of the four elements, so you have like being, knowing, perceiving, and receiving. I don't know what these are the four elements of, but basically like as you, the being, have the ability to be, you have the ability to receive, you have the ability to know, and you have the ability to perceive. And everywhere you're like functioning from anything less is like, what is knowing? The opposite of knowing is like thinking. The opposite of receiving is like sex or no sex. The opposite of what is the opposite of being?
Perceiving is feeling, and being is emotions. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people that when they talk about awareness, they need, for example, to feel it before it's real. So if you're watching this, have you somewhere decided that whatever you don't feel is not real? And when you look at an infinite being, you can have infinite awareness of everything and everyone. How often, like when you're on the other side of the world and someone in your family isn't feeling well, you already know it before they call you. This is perceiving. But if you have the conviction that you need to feel before something is real, what I've seen a lot of people do is that they will try to pull all awareness they have, everything they perceive through their body, to define what it is. And that's not functioning as an infinite being, because your body feels. Yeah. But you as a being, you perceive, which doesn't exclude feeling, but like how much bigger is perceiving?
Yeah, it's just like you're perceiving information. Like you don't have to go through it and feel so sad today. What if you're perceiving that a lot of the people in the world is sad? That's actually a good one that Dr. Dane once said. Am I feeling it or am I perceiving it?
Yeah. And sometimes it will be so intense. That's always a tricky part for me as well. Like it's so intense that it's so intense, it must be mine. Like this, it hurts, or I feel so bad, or it must be mine. Otherwise it wouldn't be that intense. And then there is this question, like, who does this belong to? So if you don't decide that it's yours, and you know, even though it's very intense, and even though you can't move or you feel really, really sick, and you ask, like, who does this belong to? And like, is it mine? Is it someone? Is it something? I'm always impressed how quick these things change. It's like instantaneously often. And if not, there is something else to be looked at. But I think that's an amazing capacity our bodies have. And what will it take for us to be smarter with that and to start using all capacities to our advantage? And it's the same thing with the distractor implants. You know, you can totally use intensity, like for example, getting angry at your kids. Will that sometimes work really well to make them actually change direction? And that's the thing with these distractor implants. If you just do it from intensity to make something change in their world, it will just be like, whoops, you shout or you scream or whatever you need to do, and 3 seconds later that energy will be over. But how often do we then flip into like anger and 5 years, no, hopefully not 5 years, maybe in marriage 5 years, but like with your kids maybe 5 hours later you're still angry. What for? Because you wanted to change the energy, or just because you're not aware? And that becomes so invasive to our bodies. Yes. It's literally attacking it because the chemical reaction with anger, oh dear God, it's just horrible for our bodies.
I actually have like a cool story to maybe finish off, which I hope it can be contribution to any of you guys. I remember like a few years ago, I felt that I wanted to die. Like I had suicidal thoughts, and I felt really guilty, and I was blaming, I was ashamed, like, you know, I'm doing this, I'm a facilitator, like this, you know, all of that. And I wasn't really going anywhere. Like this was like a rat race in my head, going all over and over and over. And then at one point I had the idea, like, I'm going to give myself total permission to kill myself. And, and that was basically the gift that I gave myself. And I was doing research of all the ways that I could kill myself. And there was even like a knife that I was like putting very close to me. And I'm sorry if this like is bringing any buttons, but this is what if it can be a contribution. Like what if it's not as evil and as weird to bring this out, like, you know, somebody with suicidal thoughts. And listen, this is the part. After 2 days of giving myself total allowance to kill myself, I was like, oh, I maybe can ask a question. And the first that popped in my mind was, who does it belong to?
Wow.
And I was aware of my uncle who died on suicide. And his suicidal thought energy was still with him. And I picked it up. And I was like, oh, hi, uncle. And he wanted me to have a conversation with his son that's still alive. And like literally that moment, the whole suicidal thoughts, the heaviness, it all went away, gone.
Wow. That's amazing. And yeah. I think that's the beauty and the power of these tools.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes one question and no point of view of yourself, or if you have someone around, just to have a question and not having to find the answer to change something major in someone's life. So these tools are really to start getting in that place where you function from question, and when something is funky or something is off, not judge it, but be aware of like, yeah, you can choose that. And would you be willing to receive a question so you can open up a space for true choice, whatever you choose? And that ties kind of into this distractor, to living beyond distraction. If you're functioning from distraction, you literally have no choice. You're just at the effect. Even though you think you choose, like you'll just choose from anger or you'll choose from fear, but you're not choosing. You're just like trying to avoid or do something strange. So if you want to change that, write a book.
Yeah, basically like ending up distracting, not only distracting, but the destruction of your future and your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what choice for everybody, just in general, like what choice have we all been refusing with the distraction and the destruction of our life and future have we been choosing? And for anybody out there, like what choices are available for you now if you go beyond distraction and destruction? Good and bad, the word keeps coming out with it. So there's something about the destruction. Everywhere we have been choosing destruction before choice. Good and bad, right and wrong, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yaso. I will put your information above or below this video, and in the podcast, of course, the Definitely Different Conversations podcast. I would also say that Yaso has a really bunch of beautiful classes, and basically one of your classes that's coming up, it's in Dutch, is 30 days of energy pulse, where you go through December into the new year, through the holidays, beyond distraction, in total choice. if that's is anything of your interest, to have like real choice in the holidays where there's a lot of buttons being pushed with the family around money and all of that. This is it. Like what other choices are available. I will put that link as well.
Thank you so much.
And there's this book. I will put this
oh gosh
as well.
Put it on your Christmas list if you don't have it yet.
Yes, I think it's like 30 euros or $30. It's like, and it has like awesome clearings, exercises and stuff, and a lot of information and explanation of all of what we have been talked about and so much more. And there's also telecalls, audios that if you want to deep dive in it, I'll put that link as well. So like really, what else is possible beyond distraction? Destructive distraction. I think we can assume that distraction is pretty much the destruction of you and your life. What else is possible?
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody who's, thank you, Yaso. Thank you, everybody who is looking at right now. Thank you, everybody who will be listening in the future. That's it. I'm very bad at saying goodbye. Bye, everyone.
I'm good at it. Bye.